Hello there, Year 10. Welcome along to Term 3, Lesson 6. And today we are going back to our evaluation of live theatre work. But we're going to move on to look at a different section, and that section is going to be looking at costume. Now, for those of you who don't know, live theatre can ask you, well, you will get multiple choice questions, which is really, really beneficial, but it will ask you a variety of different questions, some based on acting and performance and some based on the more design elements of the production, so set or costume. And while I'm sure, and if I were you, I would be probably focusing my attentions on the acting and the performance questions. It's nice to have the knowledge and the information around costume. So we're going to do that today, even if you decide not to use it in your exam. It's important that we go through it, and it's also going to be helpful for some of your blood brothers stuff as well. So our objectives today, we're going to identify appropriate references for a costume style question. We're going to describe a character from things I know to be true, and then we're going to apply appropriate annotations to a costume design. So for today's session, you are going to need your drama exercise book, or if you don't have that to hand, a piece of paper and a pen. You're going to need Things I Know to Be True loaded on Digital Theatre Plus, and you're going to need the resources sent with today's lesson for you to complete today's main task. So I'm going to ask you to pause the video now, make sure you've got those resources ready and waiting. Excellent. So let's kick things off. What I would like you to do, I'd like to start off by considering all of the references you would be expected to make for a costume design question in section B. So basically, all of the things that you would be expected to talk about in section B for blood brothers when talking about a costume, but then think about how they would apply for live theatre. So basically, what I'm looking for is reference the elements appropriate for a costume design question, and you can put them in a map as you normally would. So what would you be expected to talk about if you were asked to evaluate the costume in a live theatre performance? I don't want you to spend longer than about 4 minutes on this task. Pause the video now and come back when 4 minutes is done, and we will go through the answers that you didn't get. So, notice on the right-hand side of your screen, I have put some of the things that you might want to be referencing when talking about a costume question, or including, should I say, in a costume question. So, the colour of the costume. So, you wouldn't have a nice bright character wearing a black t-shirt. Colour has meaning. So, for example, blue. What is the meaning of blue? What is the meaning of yellow? And colours are symbolic. So, it's important if a character is wearing a bright yellow t-shirt, is that reflecting their personality? Is it reflecting their character? Talk about specific garments and accessories. So talk to me about the t-shirt, the jeans, if they're wearing a watch, if they're wearing a necklace, and what that might mean. How the costume reflects the characteristics of the character. So if you have somebody wearing a nice flowy dress, does that represent a free and open personality? So talk to me about how that could look. How the costume reflects the context of the play. So again, if it's set in a really hot country, they're unlikely to be wearing layers and layers of clothes. So talk to me. You can tell me about the environment as well. If the question asks you to reference something, reference it. I think that's a really key thing. So if you're asked to talk about costume, hair and makeup, include all of those things. But if it just says costume, then you don't need to talk about hair and makeup, but you can do. How does the costume reflect the character? So their age, personality, gender, social class, how the costume links to other characters in the scene, or what I might also add here is how the costume has changed throughout the play. Is it different than it was before? And what does that mean? What's the meaning of that? Why is that? Makeup doesn't always mean makeup. So let me give you an example. It could mean cuts, scrapes, bruises, bags under the eyes. That all counts as makeup. The worst thing to say is the the character wasn't wearing any makeup. They were wearing makeup. It was just presented naturalistically, and you can talk about that as well. The condition of the costume, is it scruffy? If it's scruffy, why is it scruffy? What is it representing about the scene, about the character's circumstances in that scene? How the costume reflects the circumstances of the scene. So we've spoken a little bit about that. So if the scene is in a field, how would that impact the costume? You can talk to me about the texture of the costumes, the material that is being used, and whether that has any massive significance. And then how the costume, hair and makeup would come across to the audience. So the meaning, again, that has. Now, I'm going to ask you to pause the video again, add any of the references that you didn't get in an additional colour, please. Okay, so we are going to focus on the character of Ben from things that I know to be true, and we're going to focus on the costume that you can see highlighted in the orange box in the picture. So let's ignore the costume for now. Let's start to get an understanding of Ben's personality. So I would like you to create a bubble map describing the character of Ben. So for those of you who can't remember, we have a description coming off a circle, and then off that description we talk about why you have said that. Why did you state that? Based on evidence of a moment or a particular event that happened in the play. So let me give you an example. I've described Ben as a playboy. In her opening monologue, Rosie makes reference to Ben never having a girlfriend for very long because he's always out looking for another woman. We could make loads of different references. He's career ambitious. Maybe he's irresponsible. I think actually we can see from the picture that he's often getting himself into trouble, that he doesn't take responsibility for his own actions. And again, you just need to say your description and why you have stated that based on an event, a moment, a circumstance within the play. So pause the video now. I want you to spend no longer than about 5 minutes on this task, but I'm looking for 4 to 6 different descriptions with why you have stated that coming off the description. So 4 to 6 different descriptions, no longer than 5 minutes. Off we go. Okay, wonderful. So, notice that in the right-hand corner, you have got what I should include when reviewing costume, hair and makeup. In the bottom corner, I've put things to consider, okay? Because what I'm going to ask you to do is this. I'm going to ask you to annotate the image that you see on the left-hand side of your screen of Ben, making 5 to 7 references, using the criteria in the box to help you for things that you could make reference to. Now, I've put also here, you can also re-watch Ben's scene to help you. So I've put the time, it's 1 hour, 23 minutes in to the production. And naturally, if you want to watch that so you can get an understanding of Ben's character and personality in that scene, then do so, because that will be easy for your analysis. I'm going to come on to talk about considering the following things for Ben in a few moments, but I'm going to go through a quick example with you, but I'm not doing Ben, I'm doing Rosie. So I picked Rosie's monologue from the opening moments in the play. And basically, I've just put 4 points. I'm asking you to come up with 5 to 7, but I have made 4. I think Rosie's costume is a lot harder to analyse than Ben's. I picked Ben's very purposely because I think there's quite a lot to talk about because of the condition that it's in, the differences that that condition was from previously in the play, the colours, the state of his hair in the scene. He's got sweat dripping down his face. What does that represent? But let's talk about Rosie for a moment. So I'm starting off with hair and makeup. So Rosie's makeup is naturalistic. It's subtle. And its subtlety is appropriate for demonstrating the subtlety of the character. Rosie is innocent and natural, and this is reflected well through the naturalism of the makeup being worn. She is a responsible person, and she's somebody that is relatively innocent. So it wouldn't be appropriate to have, lots of makeup. She wouldn't be wearing, for example, penciled in eyebrows, and she wouldn't be wearing liquid eyeliner, because she is natural, she's subtle, and she's innocent, and that is effectively demonstrated within her makeup, because we can't really tell she's wearing any makeup. And then I talk about the cut of her dress quite a lot. So I'm going to start with the bottom left example. So the cut and style of Rosie's dress is loose and relatively free-fitting. The airy fit of this dress is an appropriate representation of Rosie's personality. She is free, she is airy, she's nice, At this point in the play, she is travelling. The looseness of and freedom for movement that the dress provides could represent the freedom that she has in the search of while she's traveling. So for example, she's free to move around. She's looking for freedom. She's looking for what her life might be, and the dress allows her to do that. The loose-fitting nature of the dress also represents the character's location within the production. She's traveling around Europe. It would be hot. She's not going to be wearing winter clothes. And it's appropriate for the location and the context of the scene within the production. And then looking at the bottom left-hand corner, there are flowers designed on her dress. Now, the flowers are appropriate for demonstrating the innocence within Rosie's personality. Flowers are often a representation of purity and innocence, and this is appropriate for this moment in the play. As moments after meeting a boy, the naive Rosie talks of them getting married and him meeting her family, and actually, that naivety and that innocence within those flowers is represented clearly. Now, this is a much harder example than I'm going to ask you to do. All I want you to do is talk about Ben, and here are some of the things that you could consider. So, are the colours of his clothes symbolic of his mood, personality? So, is he blue in that moment? What does the colour blue represent in the shirt, and what could we talk about there? Consider the conditions of his clothes. So notice that he was wearing a suit at the beginning of the play, and now he's not wearing a tie. His sleeves are rolled up. His collar is open. His hair is an absolute mess. And what does that condition represent about that moment within the play? What has happened there? And talk about maybe the money that he owes and the stress that's caused him, and maybe the circumstances of that specific scene. Consider how his appearance is different to other moments in the play. So we've spoken about that. Explain how this is different. So talk to me about the suit that he was wearing. Talk about him looking prim and proper, and now think about and describe the two differences. Look at his hair and makeup, describe it and explain it. So he's got sweat dripping down his face. That's much easier to see in the actual filming. So I would recommend that you go back and you rewatch that. His hair is, very prim and proper at the beginning, and now it's all over the place. What is that representing? It's representing the stress of the character, the circumstances that he is in. And how does his costume, and this is obviously the most important thing, how does his costume represent his character and characteristics? What is his character there? So all I'm asking you to do is 5 to 7 references, almost like you see with Rosie. I know I've only done 4, but I'm looking for similar things, but I've given you loads of points to consider. So consider those in your annotations. And what I'd like you to do, very simply, is just annotate them on the PowerPoint document that I have sent you. So there's absolutely no need to do it in your book. If you can, create a text box and as I have done, just add them round the document. So I'm looking for 5 to 7, as I stated previously. So, I have sent you a due date with the resources for today's session, and I'd like you to upload it to Microsoft Teams, please. A copy of your annotation from today's lesson is all that needs to be submitted. But what I'm going to say to you is that I'm going to give you another task in your second lesson of this week, and then the third lesson of this week, I'm going to give you time to finish off both of those tasks. I'm not going to set you any work, because I realise that this might take you a little bit of time. So I'm going to just set 2 lessons this week with the third lesson there, so you can finish off the 2 tasks that you have been set this week, and I will then set a submission date in that third lesson. So I'll just send you an email with a link to the Microsoft Teams assignment and when I want the work. So nothing needs to be handed in today. Don't look for the Microsoft Teams assignment. As I say, for lesson 3, I'm going to give you some extra time to finish it off, and then what I will ask for is you to submit it then. Okie dokie. Thank you ever so much for your time. I hope that you're all doing very well. If you do have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. Do read through the guidance. As I say, this is one of the trickier elements, and as I say, if it came up in the exam, if it were me, I'd try to avoid it, and I'd go for my acting, but it's important that we have lots of options. So, good luck. Let me know if you have any problems. Thank you and goodbye.